If you had any advice to give people who want to start companies, do you think it'd be a passion-based or just find an opportunity and go for it?
And I think a lot of it too is there's a lot of passion, but then it goes back to just, well, what's the real why behind it?
Why do certain brands charge you $3,000 a suit? Like, what is the difference between all these things? What makes a suit more valuable than others?
3, 2, 1.
Here we go!
Welcome to Inside the Hive with Kyle and Brandon. Join us as we explore business, real estate, current events, and personal growth. We dive into the latest trends, offer valuable insight, and share stories. Thanks for tuning in. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the show.
All right, guys, welcome back to Inside the Hive. Today, we've got Matt Scored with us. He's the founder of the Grotto, a custom menswear brand that's grown from his garage to multiple locations. I'm jealous. He's a marathon runner, husband, and a father. We can't wait to dive into this journey.
Thanks, Brandon.
Thanks for being here, man.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm super excited.
I appreciate it. I got to know a little bit about you from your bio you sent over. Brandon, you gone back a little bit away, so I had to catch up. But yeah, and then you went to SDSU, and then USC is what I.
Yeah. So most of my college decisions were based around where the waves were. I grew up as a surfer.
Oh, you're a surfer.
So nice. I was literally, debating where to go to school, and I was looking even in Hawaii at some point, but decided at San Diego State. In-state tuition's a lot cheaper.
It's a cool school, man.
They had a good international business program. I kind of grew up traveling, and so that was always attractive to me. So the international component of business was always appealing. So they had a good program there. So landed at San Diego State University. And then they were offering a new dual degree program with the University of Chile. So I did 4 years at San Diego State, and then 1 year at the University of Chile, got a degree from that university as well, and got to surf a ton while I was living in Chile.
That is a very cool time period in your life, man. That sounds awesome. I'm jealous. Yeah.
It definitely was. I thought I was done and I had to grow up, and then I moved back to the peninsula in Newport Beach, and it was like...
there's not a lot of
there's not like 2.0, college 2.0.
So,
yeah, good surf spot, but it was kind of like Never Land.
Not a lot of growing up, dude.
Had a blast there, and that's kind of where I started off my career actually in finance.
Was it PIMCO, right?
So I started off at Capital Group. Okay. The company was American Fund, so Capital Group is the parent company.
Yeah.
On the advisor marketing, shareholder services side of the business. Learned a lot about mutual funds and equity and that side of the business. And then that was right around 2008 when the recession hit, the stock markets crashed. Okay. Bonds started doing really well because interest rates were dropping. So I ended up actually going over to PIMCO, and I was at PIMCO and I worked in this fund stats side of the business. And then that kind of evolved into more of the alternative investments. They had some really cool private equity and hedge fund products that I worked on. So learned a lot there. And
I can imagine, man. Big company. I mean, pretty well known.
Yeah. And a lot of high performers. So I was kind of like always being pushed to that next level. And one of the things that they kind of force you into, honestly, is either going MBA or CFA route. I went CFA originally. I took my level 1, and I was like, all right, I do not want to do this. I do not want to pigeonhole myself. I always wanted to kind of, when I was kind of transitioning into PIMCO, I was like, I don't know if investment management is something I want to do long term. So I always kind of had that itch to kind of do my own thing.
Okay.
And I didn't want to pigeonhole myself with the CFA because that's a very specialized. So I went the MBA route while I was at PIMCO. So I did
MBA
at USC.
And that's a powerhouse right there. I had some friends that did that. They came out swinging, man.
Yeah,
it was like
and that was a great university, great faculty, great business program. I actually did the entrepreneur program, which now that I'm went down the entrepreneurial route, it's kind of funny because you can't teach a lot of these things,
no.
But you get introduced to the right people and you get inspired. I think that was the biggest takeaway. I'm a part of an entrepreneurs organization, and that's where I actually first came into contact with that organization. Was one of the professors brought in, Michael Cato from Restaurants on the Run at the time, and just blew me away with his story.
Were you working at PIMCO at this time too?
I was. So that one was probably, I went through a range where I was working full time at pretty much an investment bank type of culture. So working in early, and then just jumping on the 405.
It's competitive, isn't it?
It's super competitive. It's very results driven. They rack and stack. That's the performance reviews. But yeah, having to drive in rush hour on the 405 after working all day at PIMCO to get to class, and then you're at class till 9, and then you're like, all right, there won't be any traffic on the way home. But as you know, the 405 loves to do construction, so you get diverted off into Seal Beach somewhere.
Oh my gosh,
so yeah, just. That was a grind, and that was a 3-year, because it was a part-time MBA while I was full-time at PIMCO.
You were grinding like that for 3 years?
Yes.
Oh man.
Yeah. So that
That's
was,
off
and then
too.
not only that, it was right around the time where I was getting married and getting a house, and it was a big
Busy time.
big busy part of my life. Yeah.
Yeah, busy time. So 8 years at in finance, and then was there an overlap because your company, the Grotto?
Yeah.
So was that a clean break, or did you kind of feather into that, or how did you get this idea? How did you get the idea to start a menswear company?
Yeah. So I'll start with the idea, and then I'll go into kind of how we got started. Yeah. But the idea. So again, I always was looking for opportunities. I was always just wanted to start something, didn't know how, didn't know where to start. And it was right around the time in my life where all of my friends were getting married. I was kind of in that group of 10 close friends that are all just getting married. So I was in all these weddings, and there was just this pain point constantly around men shopping for suits for the occasion of a wedding. So the options were going to an online rental type of a place, going to a mall and trying to haggle at Macy's. And, a lot of the people in the wedding party, they're not all the same size. Some are tall, some are short, some are big. So some of the off-the-rack options would fit them perfectly. Others you'd have to tailor, and it was just always a headache. And then I would look at what the brides were doing with the bridesmaids, and they were having just a blast. They were going and getting catered to. There was, confetti popping. There was champagne being poured. And it was just an awesome experience. They'd make a day out of it, and they would celebrate the occasion, whereas the guys would laugh because the left shoe showed up from the rental place at a different size than the right shoe, or the tux didn't fit. So it would become like kind of a butt end of a joke. So it kind of just hit me after getting married myself that there needed to be an experience for the groom when suit shopping for weddings. So the company actually launched as Groom's Grotto, very much focused in on the experience. The suit quality needed to be there. It needed to be at an attractive price point, but the experience is really what we were aiming for. So that's essentially
cool.
where the idea kind of came from. And then how I went about doing that, once I had the idea, I just gotten married, just got a house, baby was on the way. And I had to really kind of pump the brakes and say, okay, I can't do a clean break. Right after I got my MBA, I did start at Taco Bell corporate. Okay. It was a cool opportunity because it was a marketing finance role. So it kind of leveraged the finance background I already had, but then introduced me to the marketing aspect of business. And then it was also creating a business within a business, because it was the role was to help launch the new breakfast day part, so the whole breakfast platform at Taco Bell. So it was really fun. Started with a small team, reported directly to the executive team, and so that was a lot of fun. So I did that, but at the same time I started there, literally within days of accepting that job, I launched the Grotto out of my garage. And the reason why I did that as opposed to clean break was purely financial. I couldn't just walk away from a 6-figure job, real post-MBA job, and then start a company that, that had a lot of risk behind it. So it actually, it was good because I really got to spend time testing the market. I launched out of my garage, and then it forced me to build a management team right off the bat and really build a business that wasn't dependent on me, because remember, I still had to wake up and go to another job. Yeah. Now at breaks and stuff, sometimes I'd have to duck in and put out fires and at lunchtime and after. So I would say when you talk about the grind wasn't just from the time I was part-time MBA, that the 3-year period. It was probably the next 7 years, because I feel like I had 2 jobs during the whole time period. It was go to school, and then, work full time. And then right after that, it was work full time at a big boy MBA job, and then start a business. That was,
that's a lot.
A lot. And
That's a
again,
lot.
like baby and, dog pissing in the house. And, so definitely a busy period.
Wow,
for sure.
wow.
Yeah.
Did you know anything about fitting suits or anything? Were you passionate about that at all? Or this was just purely a hole in the market that you saw?
Yeah, so some people start business on passion, and for me, it was more of an opportunity. Like I said, I grew up in board shorts and wetsuits and surfing. So suiting was never really my thing. I did have to wear a suit, not really always a jacket, but pretty much a suit to work every day while at PIMCO. So I got exposed to that. But yeah, it was more just a hole and an opportunity that I thought I could really scale, and I thought was a big void in the market at the time.
I like that.
It's great. Yeah.
I like that. If you had any advice to give people who want to start companies, would you think it'd be a passion-based or just find an opportunity and go for it? That's something that's a tricky one. People ask us this all the time. Yeah. They come in, they want to start a business, and on our last podcast, Tanner was talking about come up with a business plan first, see an opportunity, then capitalize on it. And I see that theme with a lot of entrepreneurs that are successful. Yeah. It's if there's an opportunity, it's like that old economics lesson, just supply and demand. Yeah. Yeah. If there's a gap in the market, capitalize on it. So.
Yeah. And I think a lot of it too is there's a lot of passion, but then it goes back to just what's the real why behind it, right? Yeah. And that why, in my opinion, is always going to be stronger than just I'm passionate about it. But if you could align the why with the passion, with the business opportunity, that's where you're going to be. Yeah. So I almost feel like from an advice standpoint, is really pencil out. All right, why am I doing this? Is it something I'm passionate about it? And is there an opportunity? And is the timing right too, right? So I think if you could check as many of those boxes as possible, you're probably going to have the most opportunity for success.
Yeah, I think so.
Mm-hmm.
So you went from your garage, getting it going, getting it started up. When did you finally move into some brick and mortar and take that leap? How long did it take?
Yeah, it was about 6 months.
And that's quick.
Yeah,
that's quick,
it was what accelerated it was, so we just moved into this new house in a residential neighborhood, and new neighbors, and we would have 6 cars pull up to the house, and sometimes there were affluent customers, it'd be Range Rovers and Porsches and 5 Series BMWs all parked in my driveway, and you'd look outside and the neighbors are peering through the blinds at you, and so there was that aspect, is like, okay, what's this neighbor that just moved in, like what's going on over there? So there was that, and then there's also just my wife. She's like, people are having to go to use our bathroom. And at first it's referrals. So it's like a friend. So it's like, Brandon introduces you. So I still know you through Brandon. And, and then eventually it breaks away from, people that you even know.
Oh, yeah.
So it's like strangers going in your house and taking shits in your bathroom. And my wife was like, all right, it's great that, we're getting more people, but you gotta, find your own place. So that's really what accelerated it out. But I think that's, just the ability to test, because I didn't have that background, really test through manufacturers, really get that feedback from customers who were close, who weren't just going to go blow me up on Yelp if something didn't fit right the first time, was super helpful.
I'm curious. I don't want to get too in the weeds with it, but how'd you even get going, finding the fabrics, putting it together, measure? You said you didn't come from like a suited up background, but how did you even? I don't know if I know how to start, like that type of thing.
Yeah, I think it was just through travels. So when you go to Southeast Asia and China, those countries are, the labor is a lot cheaper, and they're really efficient at garment production. It's something that's been in their family for generations and generations. A lot of that art has already been lost in the U.S. So even if you wanted to find that sort of work here,
in Vietnam, man, you got a bunch of suits.
Yeah, I mean, there's custom suits and dresses.
You were talking all about that, man. Like you picked up a bunch of stuff.
Well, I picked up a couple of jackets, but then I came back and got the Grotto too.
It's all right. It's all right.
Well, for $40, like how can you beat that?
But to your point, right? So the question was, how'd you get started with it? So you went to Vietnam or
Vietnam,
and
Cambodia.
how long did it take them to produce a garment for you?
2 to 3 days, probably.
Okay,
Usually the next day I would even come in for obviously it was going to be messed up, so they had to refit me or something.
Right.
But within 24 hours, I was getting refit and had to wait another day. But
okay. And how much did it cost about?
I mean, literally, I think I got a couple sport coats for $40.
Okay. And you said you had to get refit
Twice, yeah. And luckily I was in this city for 3 or 4 days, so I had time. But if you were just passing through in 24 hours, there's no way.
Perfect. Yeah. And, that's really where the idea came from. It was a pure just labor arbitrage opportunity where if somebody could manufacture these in that short of time at that cost, I could then create a brand with a brick and mortar that somebody can trust and have a face behind that is not just meeting in a hotel room or not just, on a whim when I'm on a vacation. Something that somebody could build a true relationship with, right? So that's essentially what our model really is it's using labor arbitrage with a manufacturer that we finally found a perfect manufacturer we've been with for about 9 years now. And what's great about them is they essentially invested years ago in the best manufacturing equipment. So with garment production, it's you'll find a lot of these artisanal, very one-off types of tailors, mom and pop tailors. It's probably somebody like you dealt with in Vietnam, Cambodia, right? But when you're trying to build a business and you need consistency, you need somebody that has the infrastructure for unit level production at scale, and that's going to provide consistency. So what that means is investing in CAD design machines that could produce perfect templates, laser cutting the fabric so we don't have someone just using cardboard cutouts and scissors. All those things look cool in pictures, and my competitors still use those for marketing purposes, but really the quality and the consistency is going to come from the technology part of it. A lot of the sewing, pretty much all of it is still done by hand. It's really hard to just get that machine done. You can do some of that at scale if you're doing a size 40R at a 10,000 block.
Yeah.
But if you're doing a suit that's specifically made for Brandon, that's going to require a whole different infrastructure. So we landed with that manufacturer, and they've been an amazing partner.
Now you have my wheels turning a little bit. I have a whole bunch of questions here. Yeah. Forget those, man. I had no idea about the laser cutting, the stitch, anything like that. What is the difference then between if I go buy an Armani suit or a Tom Ford suit or like something custom from you? Why do certain brands charge you $3,000 a suit? Some are $5,000. Like, what is the difference between all these things then, or in your brand as well? Like, how does that? What makes a suit more valuable than others and things like that?
Yeah. So one of the things that we disrupted, and really there wasn't a lot of companies doing this at the time. There's always been kind of custom suits or even just high-end suits, but there's always so much margin built into them because we know what it costs, right? We know what it costs, and it's a dramatically cheaper if you're doing it at scale. So if you go to China or you name the country, if you do a 10,000 block of 42Rs, all exactly the same, they're going to substitute a lot of that with machine. So it's going to have the machine versus the by hand stuff, but it's going to just drive the cost down dramatically. So the margin's always been so big in our industry because of all of the marketing for the Tom Fords, for the Armanis, for just all the stuff that you see, pay George Clooney to wear my suit at the Oscars kind of thing. So that's always been a big part of it. Is just really just we went direct to the customer. We work more out of referrals. We don't spend a ton in the marketing side of things, and we just were able to lower the costs.
But they don't have it's not like they have magic fabric or anything certain
so
special.
We use a lot of the same mills.
Same stuff.
Same exact mills. A lot of our you wonder we can't disclose because I've been out to the factory and you see all of the different high-end brands that they're manufacturing for, and they're all the same. I mean, it's so consolidated. When you look at the quality of apparel manufacturing, specifically men's suiting, there's probably 2 or 3 big factories in China that supply some of the highest brands that you'll come across at South Coast Plaza or some of these other malls, even some of the higher end bespoke people that are really close to where we're at. And I use one of those factories as well. Obviously, I don't want to share all those names.
Yeah.
But so much of it is marketing, and then where we really differentiate ourselves is the in-store experience and the personalized experience. But in terms of quality, I would put our stuff up to anything else out there.
I wish I would have met you a couple months ago, man. I just bought this. I bought this suit. I've spent way too much for it now.
I even did a custom one, a competitor of yours, but like Indochino. It was like pandemic times, but I don't think the quality was there, right? I mean,
I almost wanted to tell a story about that, but I wasn't sure where. So we had there was a friend of ours.
Okay.
And they had a wedding. This is a long time.
Oh yeah, this just happened.
It was a long time ago before he knew you.
Yeah.
But Brandon mentioned this other company, and they all went there, and the exact same thing you just mentioned happened. They were like wrong. Nothing fit. Everybody had to go back. It was just a nightmare, and
it was late. It was this,
and it was all his recommendation. So that was.
It's the only place I had been.
So it's interesting you bring up Indochino. So we started pretty much the same time as them. They started a little bit before us, but they started out as a Canadian brand, 100% online. So you would find them online. They would maybe send you some swatches. You'd submit measurements, but everything was done online. They ended up getting they got purchased out by private equity, getting a new CEO. I believe his name is Drew Green, and he had a vision to just go blitzkrieg on opening showrooms across the U.S.
Oh, really?
And that's what they've done. And it kind of shows in the reviews and the experience that you just mentioned how hard it is to truly scale something like custom clothing. It's very difficult because fit is subjective. There's 1,000 things that you can mess up on: the inside jacket lining, the button color, the lapel type. I mean, you name it, there could be a mistake around it. So in terms of just process and be careful how fast you grow, that's one key takeaway that I've learned, and it's been a challenge to truly scale in the traditional sense.
You segue to my next question, man. In my experience, or Brand and I's experience with project management, construction management, we've been fortunate enough to see a lot of startup businesses and how they slowly scale franchises, especially and things like that. But when it comes to the retail that you're in and this hands-on experience, in my mind, I think, wow, if it's hands-on, it's that custom, scalability has to be difficult. Right. And I know you have a few locations, but how did you go about 1 to 2 to this? What'd you put in place? Because it seems like a task, man.
Yeah. So I'd be remiss to not mention my business partner throughout all this too. So I do have a business partner, and he's more than a business partner. He's my best friend, and I know that's kind of a no-no sometimes in business. So far, it's worked out. We've actually started a couple different businesses together. I went to high school with him. We traveled all over the world. So throughout most of this, he was helping out, but he maintained his full-time job until post-COVID and when we were kind of ready to do our rapid expansion. So part of what really helped get the second showroom up is having that really, that anchor at El Segundo, which is actually store number 2 in Spanish, just happened to work out that way. So having him there really, really helped out because he got it. He got the model. He got what we were trying to do. Instead of just hiring that position out, it was almost like as close of a replication of me, to get number 2 going. We really got to iron out, all right, what are the differences? And this all happened pretty quick, but we really wanted there to be a seamless experience going from one showroom to the next. And if somebody wanted to get measured and pick up, or if there's a wedding party and not everybody can make it to one showroom because of proximity, we wanted to have that ability to have an actual brand where it felt the same as a brand, but maybe a little bit more unique to the specific area. So like West LA is going to have a little bit more, of that. I'm horrible when it comes to these names, but like more of that edgy kind of LA vibe to it. Kind of that edgy alternative. And then, Costa Mesa is the OG, and then we have Corona, which is a little bit of a hybrid.
How many do you have now?
We have 3, and we just launched like a mobile tailoring out in Scottsdale to kind of test that market. It'll be our first out of state, and Colton is actually running that out there, and he's doing a fantastic job. And he has a couple key numbers that if he hits, we're going to open up a location out.
Awesome. Congrats. Yeah, I could see the demographic warranting this. So I don't know how you do this stuff online. Like back to that conversation where do they send you a kit? I've never done that. I felt like you needed to go in the store and have someone literally touch you and measure you properly.
I would think so. Like for sure.
Doing it yourself.
It's tough. I mean, anytime you're asking somebody to go online cold, even if it's a referral, you're still, and you're having to pay, anywhere from some of these are $1,000 suits, right? So it's a high ticket item online. It's not like you're picking up toothpaste that you could easily return. Most of these, since they're custom, there is no returns. They'll work with you on getting the fit right, but it's a challenge. So I think the strictly online model is challenging, which is why Indochino had to do it more of a hybrid model. I do think the answer is that omni-channel, that hybrid model, because once you have that first touch point in store, then the game is how do I make it as easy as possible for someone who's super busy to purchase again, right? We already have their measurements.
That's
so
right.
how do we make it very easy for them to purchase online? So I think in the perfect world, and I think what Indochino's doing, and what we should probably be doing as well, is have that in-store experience and then be really good at making it easy for repeat purchases online.
Yeah. I'm a big fan of that hybrid. You get these like the cars, even a hybrid car, Formula One, with the electric motor and the gas. I think it's the wave of the future.
Yeah.
I think you need to stick to that. All electric, all gas. I'm a fan of hybrid, but I could see that with the omni-channel thing. Yeah. I really could.
But I mean, it's hard now to ignore online e-commerce. I mean, there's definitely value in it, but to just acquire a customer at that, it's challenging, and ads and ways to acquire, unless you're very creative with marketing, and I feel like you kind of need to have a certain size scale to be able to do that. It's tough to make for it to pencil.
Bought a pair of sunglasses using AI. They had a thing where I looked on. Next thing you know, they're putting them on my face.
Yeah, love those.
And it was pretty cool, man. Yeah. And I was like, well, let's give it a shot. It's $100. Let's just see. Yeah. They showed up. These things are pretty cool. They fit. I was like,
I've done that too. I've done that too. I've taken kind of like a selfie with the AI, and then I sent it to my wife. Hey, do you like these or these?
Yeah.
And then she's like, I like the second one.
Pretty accurate though. I actually did it like independently even, and I was like, wow. Yeah. Actually showed up like, hey, these fit my face
there's all
pretty
kinds of cool technologies like that coming out. Yeah. That help improve the shopping experience as well as just reduce return rates, hopefully.
For sure. What's this mobile app, mobile tailoring that you mentioned in Scottsdale?
So it's brand new for us. It's not new to the industry, but essentially we had an all-star employee that was working at El Segundo who didn't want to leave the company and came to us with a proposal and said, hey, I really want to see if we could enter the market out in the Scottsdale area. That's where I'm from. I have some connections out here, and with the goal of eventually opening a showroom location. So now it's kind of like, well, does it just have to be Scottsdale, or if somebody wants to, and maybe there's a minimum price, maybe we could fly out somewhere and meet with somebody face to face there too. So we're kind of experimenting with that, trying to just see does it make sense? But it definitely makes sense for the Scottsdale location because it's a way to test the market without fully committing to a physical location. And I feel kind of bad for him because Scottsdale's been this fairly recent. I think he went out there in March, and that's when everything becomes hot. So he's out there trying to sell 3-piece suits in 120-degree weather is not the easiest.
That's difficult.
It's like selling ice to an Eskimo, right? Yeah, but in suit.
Well, it must be some all-star employee though that you believed in a proposal like that to expand
and he's grinding because it's just like anything else, when you go into a new market, it takes time, and I think you have to be consistent, you have to be patient, you have to persevere through some stuff. But things are starting to snowball in our favor, starting to get some traction out there. So
once it cools off, it'll be fine. Yeah, I mean, I lived out there for 10 years, and it's just once it cools off,
for sure. Totally.
It's not even that bad. I grew up there. I mean, it's in the summer, it's really not that bad.
That's what everybody says that moves out here. Yeah. They're not there.
That's why I'm out here.
Now, there's a lot of people that have been moving back out there, I've noticed. So
yeah. Cost of living is down a little bit for sure, yeah.
I was curious about menswear in general, suits in general. It seems like the style, if I look back 100 years, I'm sure there's details and nuances, but a suit almost 100 years later is still kind of a suit. Yeah. Where do you see menswear and suits going in the future? Is there any new trends? You think it's ever going to change completely, or is it, hey, classic's classic? What do we?
Yeah, so there's a couple things there. I think that much like other things in business, real estate especially, it's cyclical in nature. So what was made fun of baggy 80s, dad suits. You're starting to see Justin Bieber and, influencers start to go that baggy look again, right?
Yeah.
That we never thought would come back. So all that stuff I feel like is just cyclical.
I've seen some double-breasted stuff lately.
There's some double-breasted. The pinstripe is kind of making a little bit of a comeback, but really more of a, less like a full break and less taper on the leg we're seeing.
I've seen a full break, really.
Yeah.
I never liked that
just
look.
Just baggy in the leg, right? Which, when you're into nice tailored fitting suits, we would say it's sloppy, but to others it's it's fashion and it comes and goes. So what's nice about us is we don't have to forecast that stuff. We produce in real time. So if somebody wants something, we could easily do it. Whereas even fast fashion like Zara and stuff, they're constantly playing that game of how do I purchase and forecast and make sure that this is going to sell and I'm not going to have to liquidate, and that stuff changes on a dime sometimes. So that is an advantage that we have, is we don't have to hold that inventory.
That is, yeah.
Yeah, that's fascinating. When you talk about those mills that you're getting some of your materials from, is that what you're talking about, like the fabrics, right? Like
Exactly.
That's where some of these high-end suits are getting these fabrics from London or wherever they're coming from.
Exactly. And some of these mills have been around since the 1600s. I mean, it's where the King of England still gets their suits from. I mean, there's
Savile Row.
And mini Huddersfield types of fabric mills, like they exclusively get
I went to London and Savile Row, and it was like overwhelming. I've never seen so many.
So
it was like
there's
which
a
one you could choose from. There's 50.
So huge suiting culture, and that dates back between England and Italy. I mean, that's kind of where everything all the roots when you look at suiting kind of date back to.
Yeah. I think you got to be pretty advanced in suiting to go over there and get that done. I was like, I don't know, this is over.
You just have to have some money.
Yeah, some money.
You just have to have some money. That's it. They'll take care of you if you show them.
It seems like how the world works. Huh?
Yeah.
If you have money, everything kind of
They'll teach you.
They'll teach you.
Yeah, and that's, I think that's one thing that we didn't want to be as a company. We wanted to really attract that middle market consumer, because when we were doing research and we were going out to like other top end clothiers when we were launching, it just felt very stuffy and snobby and snooty.
Yeah.
And we wanted it to be genuine and fun and approachable in price, not pricing out 90% of the market.
Well, that too, like in this office here, we have some interns, right, that are, they're going through in college right now. Mm-hmm. They're going to get into the job market soon if they don't work for us, which we hope they do. But if they get out there, they're getting their suits for the very first time. So they get their very first suit. I think it can be almost an overwhelming experience when you go out and you're like, where do I go? What do I do? Yeah. I was always told, get a navy blue classic for your first one, but I see kids doing job interviews that come here wearing like black suits and things like, is there any advice? Yeah.
I've brown shoes.
Yeah, I've saw it. And it's like, you don't want to, listen, I'm judging them off their merit, off their grade. Like it is. But when you show up in a black suit, white socks and brown shoes, I'm like, holy shit, bro. Yeah. Like we got to work on this a little bit. So, I mean, what would you say for that young guy that's just trying to get it going for the first time? Like that's.
I mean, unfortunately, I mean that they're entering the job market post COVID, which nobody knows because they're used to wearing pajamas, right? It's like imagine going from the dorms to now being able to work from home in pajamas, and then now having to go into a job interview, right? Yeah. So the saying is black suits are for funerals and weddings, and exactly. I do believe that for most of the time. So I would say the navy and the gray are going to be the staple suits in the wardrobe to get started.
Gotta have those two.
Gotta have those two. And I mean, again, that's something that I think we add a lot of value to. Our suits start at $479. So if you are
that's reasonable,
very reasonable for someone that's getting into it custom, and we'll help with that kind of stuff. So one of the things that our stylists are trained to do is just ask those open-ended questions. What is this? What is the occasion? How often are you going to be wearing it? What else do you have in your wardrobe? Do you already have a navy, or do you just have a black? So we'll ask those questions, and then we'll make sure that they're not pairing black with brown or wearing white socks, unless you're trying to look like Michael Jackson on stage.
Yeah.
I think the other answer to that is you have to dress for the part. So do some research on the culture, the background of the company. Yeah. If you're in investment management, I came from that industry. Yeah. It is more
it's conservative.
You have to be conservative.
Yeah.
If you're going to be investing with a company, you want to make sure that they're not, doing a ton of speculation. You want to make sure that they're being conservative and doing their due diligence, and but if it's a marketing firm like Taco Bell, maybe it's okay to wear a bright colored plaid blue sports jacket and jeans, and have more of that creativity shine, right?
The image you project is how you're perceived, often enough. I mean, it could be a good thing or bad thing, but it is the reality, I feel like.
And first impressions,
Yeah.
I think there's still, I think there's a stigma or some sort of a, thought that, you shouldn't judge a book by its cover. Mm-hmm. And that might be true. You might find something different, but I could guarantee you the first impression is going to be everything, especially on like a job interview.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. What? Where do you see the Grotto going? I mean, you plan on scaling more locations, or?
Yeah, so we're kind of at that stage, and one of the reasons why I took the job at Taco Bell is I was really interested in like the franchisee franchisor model, and I originally thought that was going to be for the Grotto, and we even we didn't talk about this, but the initial thought was, so half of our budget went to a 3D body scanning machine, which I had in my garage. And the initial thought was,
oh, no kidding,
you could have more accuracy, you could limit labor costs, you could have somebody step into a machine, have a cool experience. That gets directly sent to the manufacturer, and then a perfect suit shows up every single time. That didn't turn out to be the case. And
it sounds like it would work.
It's on paper, it sounds like it would work, and I'm always looking at that technology. But we were talking about just body posture and shoulder slopes and preferences, and there's so much more that goes into suiting from an art standpoint than just the numbers that a machine spits out. So that franchisee-franchisor relationship kind of did more than just, talk me out of the franchisee, model. It also just kind of showed me how businesses could scale and how they could be managed and structured. And one of the things that I think we need to do is get to 5 locations just as soon as possible. And then you could start bringing in that area manager that manages those locations. So the goal is basically just San Diego, one more in LA, and then maybe Scottsdale as well, depending on where that goes, as quickly as possible. And then that'll kind of prove out that little pod of locations with that area manager, and then that would open the door. If we wanted to scale more from there, that's where we'd probably look at taking on investor capital, or being content and just staying at that size, cash flowing, and maybe starting another business, or maybe even selling. So I don't have everything reverse engineered at this point, but I think the immediate goal is to get to that kind of that, I call it like the critical 5 to 6 stores, and then see what's next from.
We used to give advice to companies that were starting up and were building out their locations. And they wanted a franchise right away. Mm-hmm. And we were saying, like, if you don't have 5 or 6 locations, mm-hmm. how are you going to build a franchise model and do that? I mean, you have to have it just be repetitive over and over. So
yeah. And you have to, I learned so much at Taco Bell, like in terms of, the complexity of the product, how precise the operations need to be, the value you need to add back to your franchisees because they're paying a top line number, and they'll leave if they're not finding the value, right? And then, so it's for my business, it's not the right model. Other companies have tried that and they haven't done well in it. But it's good to kind of like know that that's not the best route for growth for us.
So no franchises.
No franchisees. I don't see that as being a viable option just because of the complexity of the product. I do think having an online, more of an omni-channel model will make sense. The challenge with that is it's literally like creating a whole other business. We do have a fulfillment center where we could service it, but managing and the OpEx involved with the website and the ongoing maintenance, and it's just another beast. So it's staying focused on one thing, and then making sure that you're not going to spread yourself too thin, I think.
Yeah. Sure. And what are some of those biggest challenges of opening the next location? Is it people, just all the, it sounds like you got some processes in place, obviously.
Yeah, it's always the people. I think what we've found is having that anchor at the location is the most important part. They're going to be the one that's holding, the brand standards to, within spec. They're going to be hiring, they're going to be holding people accountable. And that's really what we've been fortunate enough with our locations is we've been able to have good people that we've been able to hire, and really we've just been kind of promoting from within to manage new locations. It'd be great if we could do something like that. I mean, that's what we're going to hopefully do in Scottsdale. That's what we did in our Corona location, and then the El Segundo location. My business partner started that one, and then had plenty of time to like train the right person. But once you start getting out of that immediate geographic area, that's where it becomes a lot more challenging to find the right people.
Yeah. And your locations tell me you're not necessarily in retail centers. Like you don't bank on foot traffic or anything, right? These are appointment only, or how does that work?
Yeah. So one of the things that we really wanted to make easy, like, was the convenience factor for our customers, and going into a mall and dealing with parking and all that just really wasn't convenient for the customer. So we look at locations where it's easily accessible, the parking's easy, and you're not going to have to deal with malls and that kind of stuff. We are by appointment only, so it doesn't really necessitate a ton of foot traffic. Our Corona location is in more of a traditional retail location. It has a drive-through Starbucks in the parking lot and restaurants, and but we haven't seen really any sort of a difference in terms of sales at that location to justify the excess, the more expensive retail costs.
Okay. If you're not in retail locations, how do you drive customers to your store? Is it online?
70% referrals, 30%
No kidding.
is through ads,
Oh.
Yelp, Instagram, Facebook, that kind
Okay.
of stuff. Yeah.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah, so it's kind of our own internal accountability metric. If people aren't having a great experience, they're not going to be referring people.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
the business shrivels up and dies, right? So we really pay attention and to the referral part of the business. But yeah, it's our ad spend it's getting more and more challenging to acquire customers that are profitable.
Yeah.
And our lead time, or I guess our sales cycle, is just different. You're not usually getting people that go on, see the ad, and then click to buy a product or a widget. It's, I need to talk to my wife. All right,
Yeah.
I'm going to book an appointment now. So we count conversions based on somebody actually booking an appointment, and then once they come in our location, our conversion rate's pretty damn good to where we just count that as the conversion. But yeah, it's right around. I mean, if you want to get into the numbers, like we're looking right around, $100 to $125 to acquire a customer wedding party. But usually with that customer, we hope that it's a wedding party. So you're not just getting the groom; you're getting the groom plus 5 groomsmen.
Yeah.
So now the ticket's not $700; it's $3,500, right?
Very cool.
Love that.
And we skipped over this part, so we have to go back a little bit. But this is all self-funded. I'm assuming that you haven't. Okay, so everything was just your own, just savings type of thing. No SBA loans, no investment, anything like that.
So yeah, very. I mean, and it reflects in kind of how slow we've actually grown, right? So we were very conservative with not, and we didn't want to have to report to anybody. I mean, part of the reason why you get an entrepreneurship and your own business is you don't want to have to report to somebody or be responsible to investors, at least at the early stages.
Yeah, Brad and I just discovered that recently. Is that we've been doing our own thing, construction management, project management, but now that we're buying retail centers, we have, I think, 23 different investors right now, 24, and it's reporting, it's talking to them, it's a lot, and it's a whole different business model.
Yeah, and your time gets split more, right? You have to do a little bit more time into other things versus just focusing in on the business. Which, self-funded. It's not like it was very expensive to get started. Again, like our startup costs are relatively low. We're not building out freestanding locations or anything like that. We do own one of the locations in Costa Mesa, which is nice.
Oh, do you really?
But the other ones are leased.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Own your own.
Yeah, talk about that. Are you guys?
That's
we
great.
like
So
that.
that was
Is this segue into the real estate part of
great
this?
segue. Right. So
Well, 'cause
for
you
10
did,
years,
you did a good purchase on that too. I mean,
for
Yeah.
10 years working with this guy, we're gonna buy our own building eventually, and that's what we're gonna do. So
Yeah.
I'm gonna be hearing that for another couple of weeks. So thank you for.
Yeah.
But yeah, so you bought that when? Just
Yeah. So, and we could also talk about COVID and that whole pivot if you guys want to too, because we had to shut down for a whole year. Like we were pretty much out of business.
That's too bad.
But coming on the back end of that, we got presented the opportunity. So I had a really good relationship with our landlord, who was very old, but just a cool dude. I mean, he just really down to earth, genuine guy. And I was always like, hey, do you ever want to sell this? And he's like, I can't because it's fully depreciated, and I just want to, step up cost basis to whoever inherited it, to my trust or whatever. Yeah. But then one day I got a call from the trustee of the estate, and he's like, hey, my dad wanted to give you first look at this property. Do you want to buy it? And I said, absolutely. And so we worked an off-market deal.
Such a cool story.
And there was no comps in the area. I don't know if you're familiar, but it's right off of 17th and Placentia. There's a Tom's Place Burgers. So it's like a higher end, a little bit higher end industrial retail, industrial park, let's call it.
Developers started acquiring a lot of that industrial and building, townhomes and condos and things like that
over there. The whole area around it.
They had an overlay. Costa Mesa had that overlay, and people scooped that up. It brought the value of all that industrial or flex through the roof, man. Did you buy before that? Because now...
So we bought kind of in the midst of it, but we bought that unit for $660, and our neighbor just sold without HVAC, completely just raw. Ours has like upgrades and stuff for $975, and then our other neighbor is on the market now for 1.1. So things have definitely gone up for sure. And, but at the time you're trying to value the property, and they're all either owner occupied or they're a wealthy guy's, man cave. So it's whatever somebody's willing to pay for it. Yeah. So how do you value that, right? And there was literally no sales for like 10 years in that area. And so I didn't know if I was overpaying or underpaying, so I just kind of backed into it, and I said, well, what's my current, rent? And, if I had to like sell it, could I, cover the mortgage payment, and that's how we got to the 660 number. I did do an SBA on that, which I was lucky that I had a relationship with the seller, because the SBA process was very challenging. It took a while. I guess I could have always done like a bridge or something like that, but I didn't have to. So put down 10% and rode the. It took a while, and then there's annual reporting requirements and things like that. But still, I think I locked in at like 5.25%, 25-year term, 10% down. So
that's great. Yeah. Seems like the best real estate deals are always if you have a relationship with the seller. This is my experience with that. I mean, the one we just acquired recently in PV in Palos Verdes up there. Yeah. Relationship with the seller, knew her for about a year, and then got that off-market transaction. And that same thing sounds like with you as well. Had that relationship.
Yeah, and they don't want to deal. I mean, if they trust you and they know that you're to your word, yeah. So good. Helps the balance sheet, but not cash flow, I guess.
Yeah. But yeah, we could back up, because you were mentioning that during COVID, you guys obviously couldn't be seeing people.
Yeah.
And you had to make a pivot on some level. So talk about that. What did you do?
Yeah. So I was fully, into, I didn't have any other jobs. So this was my sole source of income. So with the COVID outbreak, there was a mandate to shut down for, I think, 3 months. But because our whole business, revolves around selling suits to people that either work or people that are getting married, which are events. We felt the impact a lot longer than 3 months.
Yeah.
So people postponed their weddings and everything. That's
it was tough. I remember literally like probably 11, 12 at night. I was at the showroom by myself with a bottle of Jack Daniels. Promise I'm not an alcoholic, but I and a whiteboard, and I went through the exercise of all right. What's my current spend? What's my burn rate? Like, did all these kind of establish where I was at financially, and then I just had to make decisions on staff and what I was going to do with the business, and then I knew that I was going to have to find something else, because there's a lot of talk about how all the small businesses benefited off of all these credits and things, but that didn't come until way later. If you have to pay bills, you can't. So basically what happened was I started brainstorming with my business partner on what we could do. And the interesting thing is this China wave, the COVID wave went through China first. And so the Chinese already kind of knew that it was coming to the U.S. So one of the big things at the time was like all the PPE gear, the masks, the gowns, all that stuff. So our initial thought was, well, why don't we source from them because we have the relationship, and then sell here something that's in high demand, right? So we literally overnight started a company called Voyager Medical Supply, and it was a ton of fun. Like it went from the most depressing scenario to a huge opportunity in front of us. And for those that have started businesses, that those initial kind of weeks or even months of the business is kind of like the honeymoon phase where you're just super excited. You're just up, you wake up early, you jump out of bed, you're just so into it, right? You're so excited. And that was exactly what me and my business partner, Nick, went through getting this off the ground. And, we got website up, we got everything up. And really what caused me to go all in was I had a couple friends that worked in hospitals, and they were literally authorized to just buy. If I could come up with the product, they would just be authorized to buy it.
No kidding.
So I was like, all right, there's definitely something here, and it just progressively kept getting worse in terms of supply-demand imbalance. And we ended up forming relationships with the CDC, the VA of California. I ended up having a strategic sourcing relationship with a gown manufacturer out of Mexico, because a lot of these government contracts, the tensions weren't the best with China at the time, so they were more willing to award contracts to gowns coming outside of anywhere but China. And there was only a couple, so I kind of had this strong relationship that I formed with a manufacturer out of Mexico. And we did millions of gowns and millions of masks. We did about $6 million that year.
Wow.
No kidding. So you had the suit business, menswear, shut down, pivoted, and then did $6 million?
Yeah.
Good for you, my man.
Within a year.
That's pretty wild.
Yeah. So that did help fund our growth, and then it did get me into some of these real estate investments. I don't know, after listening to your last multifamily podcast, it doesn't sit well with me, but but yeah. So that was a fun period, and then when that wound down, it's funny because it's a mistake, but I sent it to Brandon. One of the hospitals, they must have had the invoice number wrong, but they sent me a check for $156,000. So I'm like,
are you really?
And I'm trying to get a hold of them. I'm like, I'm trying to reconcile this invoice number, whatever, against the purchase order, because I'm like, is there a chance that they're this? But I'm like, no way. But
oh wow.
But yeah, so that got we wound that down, and then business picked back up dramatically. There was so much pent up demand that it just, we got kind of slaughtered trying to keep up with the demand post-COVID with the wedding space. And now we're seeing it kind of taper down. I'm always keeping an eye on the economy and trying to be a little cautious there. But yeah, that's the story of my pivot.
Nice. No, congrats on that.
I think it's a good story, the whole thing, man, from where you started till now. That's pretty.
It's been enlightening.
It's pretty. Yeah. I mean, yeah.
What are you seeing in the economy? I know you're watching that. I mean, you're on the front lines, consumer demand and whatnot.
I agree. You are.
Yeah. What trends are you seeing right now?
Yeah, it's kind of I feel like it's a little bit of a mixed bag. The wedding space is holding up really nice. I feel like it's a once in a lifetime spend. So there's kind of that thought that, hey, if I'm going to allocate, or go into debt on or prioritize, it's going to be the wedding spend. So I think that helps a little bit in an economic downturn. But I mean, we're seeing, same store sales I don't like doing same store sales with El Segundo and Corona because they're a new store, so they should be lapping, right? But for Costa Mesa, it's pretty much flat. So I haven't seen much impact yet, but we are consumer discretionary luxury to where I'm optimizing at this point, not focused too aggressively on the expansion in the current economy.
Fascinating.
Good to know. We're still seeing a lot of action on leases coming in on our centers. People are really bullish on retail.
Yeah.
We're looking for new things to acquire right now, and vacancy rate is still 2%, 3% in retail, and sales are still up. So, I mean, it looks good from our perspective as well. But, you always hear things are going to, the recession's just around the corner. We're about to go. but they've been saying it for years, so I'm not sure what to think anymore, to be honest.
Yeah. Well, they say 2/3 or so of the businesses that are out there are small businesses, so non-reported, right? So when you take the survey of how many businesses are better off this year than last year, if you take that poll, I think you'll get a little bit of a different response. Versus a lot of the economic data is a year old. It's always backwards looking. So I think it's the data that looks forward, which is hard to uncover. And I do think that it's going to depend on the industry. So I know that restaurants are having a really challenging time with wage rates and making that work. And they could only raise the prices so much, right? And then people stop going to restaurants.
Yeah.
I know that there's economic data that shows the price of like household groceries, like if you were to eat at home versus if you were to go out to a restaurant. And usually it's a little bit of a premium to eat out at a restaurant, but now that's widening to where it's a lot more expensive to eat out at a restaurant or fast casual or even fast food, right? Or you hear McDonald's. And so at what point does the consumer say, hey, I got to just go back to having groceries at home? That is going to impact retail. So quite a bit, but what about other retail companies? What about dentists? And I don't know.
You can all speculate. Well,
I'll speculate.
Yeah.
I think as a center, it's I would want to see diversification, right?
Yeah.
I'd want to, if it's all restaurants, I would be like, but if it's diversified, then that'd give me a little more peace of mind. If they're big established companies, obviously that gives me more peace of mind as well. But yeah, we will see. It's interesting times. It's very rare that things take a turn right before elections. It's always like a quarter, 2 quarters after the election where things shake out.
Yeah.
So I feel like we'll probably be good. All the metrics will be shining bright.
Yep.
Until,
and then in 25, we'll see what's going to happen.
Yep.
Yeah, because I saw the Big Mac effect or something, right? Like that's been trending down kind of globally even. So they've got a gauge on that. And I mean, because now a meal at McDonald's is, like $15-20. So it's like some people are starting to pull back from that even. Yep. And that was a good gauge because they're kind of like bottom feeder, but like a low level. Yeah. So anyways, I saw that number is trending down, and that's usually a gauge of something.
Yeah, but Big Mac Index. It's truly used for like global inflation because it's it represents same thing with the price of a Starbucks latte.
Yeah.
Where is that at now? $6? How much more can that go?
Yeah, exactly.
For sure.
Love it.
Well, as we wrap up here, I really, appreciate you being here and learned a lot about men's suits and everything in your whole journey. But most of our listeners they're starting up businesses for themselves for the first time or investing in real estate for the first time. What advice would you have for anyone wanting to start their own business for the very first time? And what do you think that they need to do to get it going?
I think definitely like there's a lot of over-analysis and paralysis that comes with starting a business. Yeah. So I think it's taking that first step and learning as you go. So, fire, aim is another analogy. Of course, you have to have prudence and you have to think about it. But if you feel like you're the kind of person that's already read 20 books and has been to listen to tons of podcasts, and that stuff's always going to be important. Yeah. But at some point, you got to just start taking action,
pull the trigger,
and pull the trigger. So it's really important to take that first step, and then continuously have your milestones. And are you executing against a plan? Do you need to make changes? Do you need to shift? And just learn as you go would be my advice.
I agree with that.
And what's in store for Matt Scored? Aside from the Grotto and feathering down Voyager and everything? Yeah,
it's a good question. I'm definitely not going to stop with just the Grotto. I can't. I feel like I want to do more, and I don't know exactly. I have some ideas of what that could potentially be, but I don't want to make it public yet because I'm not I'm not quite there. But yeah, I think what drives me and what I'm passionate about is just the overall game of business. It's tough. It's a challenge, and having that next goal in front of you is what keeps me going. So, yeah, more things to come.
Awesome. Thank you, Matt. Well, it's been a pleasure having you
here.
We've
taken about an hour of your time here, so I guess we should wrap.
It was a pleasure being here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
All right.
Wrapping it up here.
Well, thank you, Matt Scored from the Grotto. And we'll wrap it up another episode of inside the Hive.
All right. It was a pleasure being at the Hive. Or in the Hive.
In the Hive.
In the Hive. In the Hive.